Yar, Kapla warriors! Today be a good day to learn about ye pirates. So, today it be History of Pirates Day, and yeah, that's all I got. Sorry, guys. So, yeah, today, History of Pirates, from ancient pirates up to through the Golden Age of Pirates. I didn't really touch on modern pirates much, just a little bit, just a little, what do you call it? I don't know. Anyway, so, let's review the schedule before we get started. Mondays are... Oh, and before I get started, thanks Chim for becoming a Tier 3 Legendary Commander member. I'll make sure to get your name in the credits of the next video. Speaking of which, I've just finished voicing the next tier list. It had, it got a bit derailed, but now it's all ready to go. Well, not ready to go. It's voiced and it's written. Well, obviously it's written if it's voiced. And, after rewriting large chunks of it due to the latest chapters with Absolute and Utah, and I'm hoping to have it out by the end of the month, will depend on my work schedule, of course. Now, streaming schedule. Mondays are gaming. Played some Story of Seasons Grand Bazaar yesterday. Tuesday is cozy streams. Yesterday we read Blanc and Noir's spicy, steamy Bond stories. Wednesday's a class with Dr. Export. And then Thursdays are more gaming, which will, of course, be more Story of Seasons. I have learned how to catch bugs. I've gotten a pet cat. Not cat. I've gotten 2 pet dogs. What am I saying? And something else. I can't remember. And then Friday, Nikkei guest host streams. In the lead is Siren, so I'm assuming Friday will be a Siren stream. First one in quite a while. All right. So, the history of pirates. So first, a definition. The word pirate in English originated in the 1300s, though the history of pirates goes back much further, and the word comes from a Greek word. So, ancient pirates. According to classicist Henry Ardern Ormerod, the coasts of the Mediterranean are particularly favorable to the development of piracy, because the rocky shoreline was not good for agriculture and couldn't support a large population, so the villages were mostly small and didn't have a lot of resources, and their primary method of sustaining themselves came from fishing. Most men had boats, seafaring skills, and navigational knowledge. And then this kind of led to some expanding of skills to include piracy and warfare. So the first recorded pirates are the mysterious group known as the Sea Peoples. So it's very mysterious. There's only so much we know about them, but they are referred to in historical texts, some clay tablets. They were a confederacy of seafaring raiders. From the Central and Eastern Mediterranean, they sailed east and invaded Anatolia, Syria, Canaan, Cyprus, and Egypt toward the end of the late Bronze Age period, and supposedly their raidings were a major factor in the decline of the Bronze Age. So around 1200 BC, the Sea Peoples, as they were known, terrorized the Mediterranean coast. They brought down entire empires. They pillaged, they plundered, and they burned whole cities. So very much what you think of when it comes to pirates: pillaging, plundering, burning cities and all. And then, so one of the oldest documents ever found that references pirates was from 1350 BC. It was a clay tablet. I thought I'd written down... Where's my notes? Hold on, let me scroll. I seem to have lost that part. I want to mention it was, I believe it was Pharaoh Akhenaten. Yeah, so a clay tablet from the Amarna letters, as they were known, in 1350 BC, refers to pirates attacking Egyptian trade ships. And I believe that was Pharaoh Akhenaten, the heretic pharaoh, as some call him. And then Homer's epics also, the Iliad and the Odyssey, reference piracy as a common practice in the Aegean world, but that's a bit later. Scroll back up. So this is one image that you'll see associated with the Sea Peoples. I assume this here is Egypt defending itself. You can see the Egyptians defending themselves from the Sea Peoples. And it was made up of multiple tribes. There were some called, so there was the Luca, the Karkia, the Peliset, the Shekelesh, the Sherden, the Weshesh, the Ekwesh, the Denyen, and the Tieka. Here's some more images. I don't quite understand this, but this is related. So the Bronze Age collapse was very much related to these Sea Peoples because they were taking down empires. They just were devastating these groups. So you can see here, it says Egyptians defeat the Sea Peoples down here. But so yeah, they were causing a lot of problems around this area here. And then this image as well shows, so in the Mediterranean, let me zoom in. So you can see destroyed cities. These red dots represent destroyed cities destroyed by the Luca, the Sherden, the Weshesh. And then the Sea Peoples attacked these green areas. They destroyed settlements here in modern-day Syria and Cyprus. And then, so they did all kinds of damage in the area. So here's another image of them. I believe this is supposed to be the Sea Peoples. As you can see here, the Egyptians versus the Sea People hats. So this is one of the reasons I got delayed in doing the history of pirates, is I was really interested in the Sea Peoples and this next group. So I spent hours on them and then ran out of time for the more pirate parts of history. So the next group is the Illyrians. So please understand, when I say Illyrians, I do not mean the Illyrians from Star Trek. These are different Illyrians. So here's one of them. This was the badass Queen Teuta. I'll mention her. So the Illyrians were skilled craftsmen and shipbuilders. They controlled the Adriatic and Ionian seas using warships. I wish I could have found more images of their warships, but their warships sound really cool. They fought with a Sika, I don't know. This was their sword. It was a curved tip sword. Very cool, very pirate, isn't it? And the Illyrian tactics consisted of lashing their galleys together in groups of 4 and then inviting a broadside attack from a ram. So they had really cool sea warfare and sea warships. They were very skilled. Here's one image of their ships that comes up, and you can see it's mentioned that their ships often had these beautiful carvings. There was one I read about that had a carving of, I think it was a lion? I don't know, but they would do these really cool carvings on them too. So they weren't just badass, but they were also beautiful. So their ships, they were often referred to as pirates, and they raided Greek and Roman vessels. Their indulgence in piracy was one that brought them infamy and invited their downfall because, of course, people wanted to stop them. The Greeks and the Romans were like, we got to do something about this. And the 3 main types of Illyrian warships were the Lembus, the Laberna, and the Pristis. Oops, wait, I thought I had one more image of a ship. Oh well. So this is Queen Teuta. You should read more about her. I didn't want to go too in-depth on her. She was really cool. She became queen after her husband died or was unalived, and under her, the Illyrian piracy reached its height. So she was a really cool, and hey, if this is accurate, she looks like she was quite beautiful as well. Very cool woman. I love reading about these queens. Sorry, thirsty. Alright, and there were attempts to stop piracy at the time. So the rulers of Minoan Crete were the first to raise a navy specifically for the purpose of battling piracy. So as it said, you know, it brought about downfall as well because they made themselves a target by being so fearsome. And here's an interesting little quote that I found. In his De Civitate Dei, St. Augustine recounted an exchange between Alexander and a captured pirate. I think they mean Alexander the Great. For when that king had asked the man what he meant by keeping hostile possession of the sea, he answered with bold pride, What do thou meanest by seizing the whole earth? Because I do it with a petty ship, I am called a robber, whilst thou who dost it with a great fleet art styled emperor. So I thought that was pretty badass, right? He's like, oh, I'm a bad guy because I'm fighting people on the sea, but you fight people on the land and you're cool. He's like, I've just got this little ship, what's the big deal? So, pretty badass response, right? What argument can you make with that? Alright, I could have sworn I had one more image. I can't find it. Oh well. So moving on to the Middle Ages, which isn't quite as interesting. Kind of the Dark Ages of interesting pirates, I suppose. I mean, there's some, but it was lacking compared to, of course, the Golden Age and the ancient pirates, of course, exceptionally interesting to me. So, one thing that's complicated about pirates of the Middle Ages in particular is, were they pirates or merchants? Because they often started out as merchants or were hired by the countries that they were from, and then eventually turned to piracy, which you'll see here. So one group was the Corsairs, or Barbary pirates. There's a lot of names they're known by, but those are the two ones, I think. Two main ones, the Corsairs and the Barbary pirates. Their predation extended throughout the Mediterranean, south along West Africa's Atlantic seaboard, and into the North Atlantic as far north as Iceland. But they primarily operated in the Western Mediterranean. So again, that Mediterranean area, ripe for the picking. And then in addition to seizing merchant ships, they engaged in razzias, which were raids on European coastal towns and villages. Mainly in Italy, France, Spain, and Portugal, but also in the British Isles and Iceland. So here's a cool image as well of some ships. A group of them. Hello, Josput. And then another group, unfortunately very lacking in any images of this group, but they're quite interesting. So, okay, I hope this isn't too blurry for you. Here, I believe this represents... I think what this says is this is the day of the hanging of an important figure here. So, the Victual Brothers. Has anyone ever heard of these? Apparently they were in, like, Denmark. So, they were a loosely organized guild of privateers who later turned to piracy. So this was a perfect example of, they started out with legitimate things, you know, merchants, privateers, serving their government or their country, and then they turned to piracy because it was a good way to make money. And, you know, it was hard times. It was difficult to make money. So, the Victual Brothers were organized as a brotherhood or a guild, which I thought was kind of cool, because it certainly makes me think of, like, you know, video games. By the way, did anyone ever play Sid Meier's Pirates? That is one of my favorite video games of all time. Love that. I was thinking about it a lot while I played this. I mean, while I wrote this, especially, the game is set in the Golden Ages. So anyway, they started out as privateers, working, I believe, for Denmark. And then over time, they became notorious pirates, and they attacked coastal towns around the Baltic region. And then their attacks were to the extent that the maritime trade in the Baltic Sea virtually collapsed, because no maritime trade could take place because of the fearsome brothers. And then at the peak of their power in 1394, they took over the island of Gotland. So this is really interesting, and I tried to find images, but I couldn't. So this is pretty cool. They took over a whole island and made a pirate island in Gotland. And their influence in the Baltic region declined after the Teutonic Order drove them out. So they took over the island, and then they were like, all right, you've gone too far, gotta get you out of here. So the country had to go after them, drove them out of Gotland in 1398. However, they didn't give up. That's not what a pirate does. So, after being expelled from Gotland, the remaining Victual Brothers, who now called themselves the Lickadilers, which is probably not how it's pronounced. Danish is very weird. Or equal sharers, they continued their piracy and expanded their activities into the North Sea and along the Atlantic coast, raiding as far as France and Spain. And so this image here relates to their most famous leader, Klaus Stutterbeker. So, oh my god, Blue Tut, yes, that is what you do. You get them, and you can navigate super well with the canoes. Have you ever noticed that? They're faster, and you can navigate better with them. You're dead right. That's the best tip for the game. Sid Meier's Pirates. You'll feel guilty, but capture a canoe, and then you can play the game very well. I always felt guilty, though. So anyway, this is an image of the execution of Stutebeker, who is the most famous leader of that group. So I believe here on the left is supposed to represent his execution. But it was a little difficult to figure out, because obviously I can't read it. They kept up their attacks into the early 15th century, including a major raid on Bergen in 1429. So very cool. Might have one more. No, that's the only image. It was difficult with the images that had writing in a foreign language, because then I couldn't verify easily. However, if it came up in multiple searches, multiple areas, I figured. This next one is very interesting. This guy needs a movie. Very cool. Eustace the Monk. Yes, AK Chan, these are more middle-aged pirates. Golden Age pirates, those are what you're waiting for. Those are what comes to mind. So Eustace the Monk, fascinating. This guy needs a movie. So supposedly he studied black magic, later became a monk, but he was terrible at being a monk. Unsurprisingly. So he left the monastery and became a pirate and mercenary. Which is like, wow, what a 180. Like, 180s multiple times. First, black magic. Okay, 180, I'll be a monk. Okay, another 180, I will be a pirate and mercenary. Like, what the hell, dude? But sometimes he was employed by King John of England. So sometimes he did work. No problem, Braven. But you missed the ancient pirates, the best part. So sometimes he was employed by King John of England for legitimate, reasons. But he later switched sides to serve the French. So kind of like he was playing Sid Meier's Pirates himself. So he later served the French. So he was... This is supposed to be him as well. Lovely image there. So I don't know. I'm not quite sure what's going on here. It was very confusing. Yes, Mr. Finnan. King John, John the, King Richard the Lionheart. King John, his brother. What was his nickname? The lion in, King John of Robin Hood, the animated movie. Well, and real life, I suppose. I'm really sorry to hear that, Braven Wolf. I hope you know you have the support of all of us. We're all behind you. And sending you good vibes and resilience. Anyway, Alright, got on to the Golden Age. So the Golden Age, there's some disagreement about the years of the Golden Age. However, the broad agreement is the 1650s, not the broad agreement, but the broad definition is about the 1650s to 1730s. And it's often divided in 3 periods. Sometimes it's just 2 periods, depending on the scholar. But, so the 3 periods, if we go by the 3... the buccaneering period, approximately 1650 to 1680, so just 30 years, characterized by Anglo-French seamen, men of the sea, based in Jamaica, Martinique, and Tortuga, and they attacked Spanish colonies, and shipping in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific to Western Pacific. So Tortuga, of course, of Pirates of the Caribbean, really was a pirate area. So, pretty cool. Valid. Then there was the pirate round, the 1690s, associated with long-distance voyages from the Americas to rob East India Company targets in the Indian Ocean and Red Sea. So I think that's more what you think of Pirates of the Caribbean as well. Oh, my stomach. And then the post-Spanish succession period, because there was the War of Succession in Spain. So 1715 to 1726, when English sailors and privateers left unemployed by the end of the War of the Spanish Succession, turned en masse to piracy in the Caribbean. So a bunch of men were like... So basically, most men became pirates to make money. And there was the War of Succession, so privateers had been employed to fight in this war. Well, the war was over, so how are they going to make money now? Well, guess I'll be a pirate. I've got my sea skills that I've learned through privateering. Yes, Chim. Hold on. You spoiled it. The Caribbean, the Indian Ocean, the North American Eastern Seaboard, and the West African coast. And then in 1894 is when, around the time that the Golden Age term arose. So an English journalist referred to this time period as the Golden Age of piracy. And that's kind of what we started to talk about it like that more. And piracy arose out of conflicts over trade and colonization among the rival European powers of the time, including the empires of Britain, Spain, the Netherlands, Portugal, and France. So most pirates in this era were English, Welsh, Dutch, Irish, and French origin. So if you played Sid Meier's pirates, the 4 empires usually were the English, the Spanish, the French, and the Danish. The Dutch, I mean, the Dutch. And so I won't go. Sorry, I was going to go into this whole thing about the game. I don't need to do that. All right, so this pirate here is very famous. His name is Edward Teach. Yes, Marius got it. Edward Teach, or apparently sometimes Thatch. AKA Blackbeard. You all spoiled it. Blackbeard. So he's one of the most badass. I think he's got a little pet monkey right there. He was born in Bristol in 1860. And as we said, he became a sailor during the Spanish War of Succession. So he served, I assume, the English during the war. War was over. So in the late 17th and early 18th century, many private ships received a license from the British monarchy under the Commission of War, the Spanish War of Succession, that permitted the plundering of vessels belonging to a rival nation. So just like in the game, you choose your country and then you plunder vessels for your country. And then the war was over, so he figured he'd keep doing what he was doing, right? So he joined the ship of Benjamin Hornigold, who was a pirate, and joined him in looting the English. Sorry, my throat. His famous ship was named... Anyone know the name of his famous ship? Probably the most famous pirate ship that's real. You know, the fictional being the Black Pearl. Anyone know Blackbeard's ship? And Blackbeard is in Sid Meier's Pirates. And you probably know it from Freight Grand Order. Yes, Blue Tut. Queen Anne's Revenge. Probably the most famous, I'd say. And then, so he became the most notorious and feared pirate of the Caribbean. Probably fueled, apparently journalists at the time used pirates for content a lot. So the fear of pirates was exacerbated. They were obviously a legitimate fear, but journalists, you know, they needed people to click their stories, right? So they even exaggerated some of the tales. So that probably contributed to his notoriety. So here's what's really cool about him. According to the legends, he was a giant man with a dark, dusky beard covering half his face, wearing a great red coat to make him look even bigger. He carried 2 swords at the waist. I don't know if you can see that here. Look at all the pistols. And had bandoliers full of pistols and knives across the chest. Look at pistols, knives, more pistols, sword. And then what's really cool, some reports even say that during a fight he stuck sticks of gunpowder into his long hair to make him seem even more terrifying. So you can see that here. See this, the gunpowder coming out of his hair. Do you see that? So many images you'll see of him include this. Did they do that? Was there a pirate who did that in Pirates of the Caribbean, the first movie? I feel like there was. During his career, he captured over 45 vessels. And then on the 22nd of November, 1718, with an enormous bounty on his head, he was unalived in a sword fight with Royal Marines on the deck of his own ship. Unfortunate. As a powerful symbol to any who dared follow in his footsteps, his head was brought back to the governor of Virginia. And I imagine he displayed it or something. I'm sure they didn't, No, I don't mean him specifically, Nasty, but wasn't there a pirate on the Black Pearl who did, like, the smoke thing in the beard? In the first movie, when they're raiding Port Royal. But it's not Blackbeard. I thought maybe they were just going with that. Wonder what this hair down here is. Looks like a tail, but I'm more afraid it's a scalp. Alright. Next is... all the images look like this, of course, because I assume because of the printing press. Benjamin Hornigold, who I actually had never heard of, but he's apparently best known for being the mentor to Edward Teach, aka Blackbeard. So Blackbeard served as a privateer, then he joined Hornigold in looting British ships, and then he became Benjamin Hornigold. Is that... Wait, what? No, Jack's... I don't know, Chim. Is that what it says in the movies? I never saw after the second movie. So he was born around 1680. He was a notorious pirate captain who operated in the Bahamas during the early 18th century. He was one of the most influential pirates on New Providence Island. He had control over Fort Nassau, protecting the bay and the entrance to the harbor. He was one of the founding members of the Consortium, the loose coalition of pirates and merchants that hoped to preserve the semi-independent Pirates Republic in the Bahamas. And when he was 33, he began his pirate career by attacking merchant ships in the Bahamas. And by 1717, he was the captain of the Ranger, one of the most heavily armed ships in the region. And that's when he appointed Blackbeard as his second-in-command. His first mate. Yes, this will be interesting, Braven. Yes, along with your comment is there. He was described by others as a kind and skilled captain who treated prisoners better than other pirates. So kind of Jack Sparrow-ish, right? As an ex-privateer, Hornigold would eventually make the decision, to turn his back on his former companions. He accepted a king's pardon for his crimes in December of 1718 and became a pirate hunter. So there we go with those career 180s. So he pursued his former allies on behalf of the governor of the Bahamas, Woodes Rogers. So from pirate to pirate hunter. Pretty crazy, huh? Alright, next is Jack Rackham, aka Calico Jack. He is in Pirates as well. I don't believe Hornigold is in the game. Jack Rackham is, though. Let me get some water. So born 1682. Wait, when was Blackbeard? Ah, okay. Wait a minute. 1860. Well, that can't be right. Ignore when I said Blackbeard was born. That's completely wrong. 1682, John Jack Rackham, more commonly known as Calico Jack, was a Jamaican-born British pirate who operated in the West Indies during the early 18th century. Although he did not manage to amass incredible wealth or respect, his associations with other pirates, including 2 female crew members, very famous, managed to make him one of the most renowned pirates of all time. Anyone know those 2 females? The female pirates that he's famous for being associated with. Also, from Fate Grand Order. Very famous. Ah, Braven's got it. Not. There we go, yes. Anne Bonny and Mary Read. Yes, that's right. So, he's perhaps most famous for his relations with the female pirate Anne Bonny. Rackham began an affair with Anne Bonny, who was at the time the wife of a sailor employed by Governor Rogers. So she was married. Anne's husband James learned about the relationship and brought Anne to Governor Rogers, who ordered her whipped on charges of adultery. And then Rackham offered to buy Anne in a divorce by purchase, which was sternly refused. Maybe that was a thing, I don't know. The pair fled Nassau. Nassau? How do you pronounce that? So they fled. They escaped to sea together and sailed the Caribbean for 2 months, taking over other pirate ships. She soon became pregnant, because that's kind of what happens, right? And went to Cuba to have the child. In September, Nassau. Is that what I was saying, or did I can't remember how I was saying it, but I'll say Nassau from now on. In September 1720, the Bahamas Governor Woodes Rogers issued a proclamation. So this is the guy that gave the pardon to Hornigold. He issued a proclamation declaring Rackham and his crew wanted pirates. After publication of the warrant, the pirate and bounty hunter Jonathan Barnett and Jean Bonadvis started in pursuit of Rackham. And then in October of the same year, Barnett's sloop attacked Rackham's ship and captured it, after a fight presumably led by Mary Read and Anne Bonny. Badass bitches. Rackham and his crew were brought to Spanish Town, Jamaica. What a confusing name. In November 1720, where they were tried and convicted of piracy and sentenced to be hanged. So he was executed in Port Royal, November that year. His body was then gibbeted on display, on a very small islet at a main entrance to Port Royal, now known as Rackham's Cay. So hey, at least he got a K named after him, right? Redacted, I'm not sure. What's the real name? Next, the badass. Oh, I included this picture. Obviously, it's not the real Jack Rackham, but it comes up if you Google him in images. So, apparently he was hot, is the belief. I was like, damn. Hot. Ugh, less hot. Not flattering. And some of the images of Mary Read and Anne Bonny might be reversed. I might have one for the other, because they come up together a lot. Do you mean Hornigold? Stead Bonnet! My god, redacted. I knew someone big was missing. I don't have Stead Bonnet on here. We'll have to Google him. I knew there was someone big. I was like, who's the one that's missing? Alright, born in County Cork, 1697, so she was Irish. The female buccaneer Anne Bonny, an icon of the golden age of piracy. In an era where women had little rights of their own, Bonny had to show enormous courage to become an equal crew member and respected pirate. She was the illegitimate daughter of her father and a servant, which also happened a lot back then. Bonny was taken as a young child to the New World after her father's infidelity was made public in Ireland. Well, that sucks. There, she was brought up on a plantation up until the age of 16. Must have been a very difficult life. When she fell in love with a private named James Bonny. Yes, I can't believe I missed. I was like, there's someone missing from this list. Yes, Stead Bonnet. Damn it. So Anne Bonny. More images of her. I imagine, like, was she fat? Or was this just some kind of weird thing she did with her suit? Because she looks very disproportionate. Like, she looks like she's wearing a sumo suit. And here's one. This is actually... The right, I believe, is her, and the left is Mary Read. So after marrying James Bonny, much to the disapproval of her father, I assume they mean her adopted father, Bonny established herself in the pirate hideout of New Providence. The extensive network she built with numerous pirates began to compromise her marriage, as James Bonny had become a pirate informer, and then, of course, she developed feelings for the notorious pirate, Jack Rackham. And the two ran off together in 1719. However, her story doesn't end there. She developed on Jack Rackham's vessel, the Revenge, she developed an intimate personal relationship with Mary Read, another female pirate who had disguised herself as a man. So, there's a lot of debate about what their relationship was. Because one source claims that after finding out that Read was actually a woman, she was disappointed. But then, of course, others say, no, she wasn't disappointed. They were just in a relationship together anyway. So, depends on who you listen to. I think it probably depends on when the historian was around. Because I'm sure historians today probably believe more that they were lovers. Whereas historians back then probably were less for that. Let's see. Rackham was also thought to have been extremely jealous of the two's intimacy. Well, I would imagine so. So then she became pregnant, of course, with Rackham's child and delivered it in Cuba and returned to her lover. Wonder what happened to the child. Then, of course, they were captured. This source claims that when the Revenge was attacked by the Royal Navy ship, most of the crew were drunk. And so only Bonny and Read were able to host an attack against them. Yeah, exactly. Older historians probably say they were roommates. Modern historians probably say they were lovers. So, the crew of Revenge, so unless we find their diaries, which would be fantastic, the crew of the Revenge were taken to Port Royal to stand trial, as we discussed. The true genders of the female prisoners were revealed. that they were actually women. And Anne and Mary did manage to avoid execution, however, by pretending to be pregnant. They were like, sorry, we're pregnant, you can't execute us. So Reed, well, we'll discuss that later. The fate of Bonnie remains unknown, Anne Bonny. We don't know what happened to her, but we know she wasn't executed for piracy. No, Braven, it doesn't matter, but it's certainly a subject of debate. I'm sure there's some that are very invested in it. Mary Reed? Again, very unflattering. I can't imagine this is what they looked like, although I suppose it would... Never mind. Anyway, the second of the famed and legendary female pirate duo, Mary Reed, born in Devon in 1685. Supposedly she was raised as a boy, pretending to be her own older brother. I mean, not her own. Pretending to be... Wait, yes, pretending to be her own older brother. So I don't know if that's because that's what she wanted to do, or because her father didn't want a daughter. I don't know. There must have been some reason. I don't know whose choice it was, or what their motivation were. From an early age, she recognized that distinguishing herself as a man was the only way she could find work and support herself. And avoid what happened to Anne Bonny, as far as her mother being a servant impregnated by the master of the house, her father, because that did happen a lot back then. Unfortunately. It's a terrible situation, so she didn't want to be like that. She worked in various roles and for various institutions, often becoming bored very quickly. Well, Chim, I doubt this is accurate. I think this is just what some newspaper did. Eventually, as an older teenager, she joined the army where she met her future husband. And after revealing her gender to him, the two ran away together and married in the Netherlands. So kind of a Mulan Disney movie thing there. She was burdened with bad luck throughout her life. Her husband fell ill shortly after the marriage and died. And then she was in a state of despair. She wanted to escape from everything, so she joined the army again, assumingly as a man. And then this time, she boarded a Dutch ship that sailed to the Caribbean. And she was almost arrived in the Caribbean when her ship was attacked, and she was captured. The ship was captured by Calico Rackham, Jack Rackham, who we mentioned. He took all the English captured sailors as part of his crew. So, unwillingly, she became a pirate. There wasn't much for her to do about it, right? And when she had a chance, it was not long before she began to enjoy the pirate lifestyle. I mean, probably wasn't the worst, right? Compared to what other options you had back then. When she had a chance to leave Rackham's ship, she decided to stay. And it was on Rackham's ship that she met Anne Bonny, who was also dressed as a man, and they formed a close and intimate relationship. I think I have one more image of her. No, I do not. And after months of sailing, of course, they were captured. They did what's called pleading the belly to avoid execution. As I said, they don't know what happened to Anne. However, Mary died in prison after catching a violent fever and was buried in Jamaica in 1721. So, bummer. Yeah, exactly, Bravenwolf. She didn't have a lot of better options. I mean, she could even reveal that she was a woman, but I can't imagine that would have been a great option either. She was probably better off staying on the crew and escaping when possible. Alright, another famous one. William Kidd, Captain Kidd. He was active just before the dawn of the Golden Age. One of the most renowned pirates of the late 17th century. Redacted, I would imagine there are, but I don't have any on that at the moment. Exactly, Bravenwolf. Yes. That's the nice way of putting it. I don't think so, Redacted. Yeah, it's funny, because when I first searched him, that's who came up was Billy the Kid. So I had to clarify. So, like many or most pirates before and after him, he originally began his career as a privateer. Commissioned by the British during the 9 Years' War to defend trade routes between America and the West Indies. He was later employed on a pirate hunting expedition in the Indian Ocean. However, he was tempted by the pirate lifestyle of plunder and booty and freedom. So his crew threatened mutiny on multiple occasions. if he did not commit himself to piracy. So he was like, oh, F it. Let's just become pirates. He had a relatively short career as a pirate, but was very successful. He and his crew captured many ships, including a vessel called the Queda, which was found to have a cargo worth 70,000 pounds on board. One of the biggest hauls in the history of piracy. So he could have retired right there, I guess. Unfortunately, attitudes toward piracy, hold on. 2 years, so it's 2 years since he began his voyage. Attitudes towards piracy had softened, but, his attitudes toward piracy had softened, but the English were becoming much stricter. Piracy was, they wanted to stamp it out, get rid of it, and it was declared a criminal act. So pirate hunting started in seriousness now. Pirate hunting. So when he arrived in West Indies in April 1699, the American colonies were gripped by pirate fever. In a bad way, of course. So everyone was on the hunt of pirates, and his name was at the top of the list. So the hunt for Captain Kidd. No, Woodes Rogers was a governor. The hunt for Captain Kidd was the first to be live documented in newspapers around the Atlantic world. He was Scottish and managed to negotiate a pardon from the English authorities for his actions. He sailed for Boston, stopping along the way to bury booty on Gardiner's Island and Block Island. He was then arrested and sent to England aboard a frigate and was hanged on the 23rd of May, 1701. And he was put on a gibbet at the mouth of the Thames River and left to rot as an example for other pirates. Not fun. Next is... this is Captain Kidd as well. Here's this one. He threw an iron bucket at his crew member and it sounds like maybe killed him. Unalived him. Last, before we also Google Stead Bonnet, because I can't believe I forgot him. Bartholomew Roberts, aka Black Bart. 3 centuries ago. So he was a Welsh seaman, born in 1682 in Pembrokeshire, and he turned to piracy. He didn't want to be a pirate, but again, it was alluring. And he became one of the most successful of his era. He had a brief but spectacular career, capturing over 200 ships, more than all of his pirate contemporaries combined. Let's see. He was described as a tall, attractive man who loved expensive clothes and jewelry. He quickly rose through the ranks as a pirate under the Welsh captain Howell Davies and soon captured his own vessel, which he renamed the Royal Fortune. No, Chim, not yet. We've referenced Nassau many times, but I haven't talked about it specifically. And this ship, his ship, the Royal Fortune, was close to being impregnable, and so well armed and protected that only a formidable navy vessel could hope to stand against her. He was so successful in part because he usually commanded a fleet of anywhere from 2 to 4 pirate ships, which could surround and catch victims. And Black Bart was also ruthless, and so his crew and enemies feared him. His reign of terror finally ended. Off the West African coast in February 1722, when he was unalived in a sea battle with a British warship. And his passing and the mass trial and hanging of his crew that followed marked the end of the Golden Age. Oh, I have that one twice? What happened? Oh, this way. Now, my favorite. Grace O'Malley, Granuaile, I don't know. I can't read Irish. Grace O'Malley is the anglicized name, of course. She's the pirate queen of Ireland. Her extraordinary life centers around the 16th century Tudor conquest of Ireland under Queen Elizabeth I. She was the daughter of the O'Malley clan chieftain who controlled the southwest of County Mayo and its coast from their castle on Clare Island. They were a renowned seafaring family who controlled the sea routes along the west coast of Ireland, charging a tax to fishermen and traders. In 1546, she was married at a young age to the head of the O'Flaherty clan, but he was unalived in battle, so she became the head of that clan as well. She later remarried another powerful Irish chief, Richard Burke, but divorced him after 1 year under the ancient brand laws and got to keep his title and Rockfleet Castle near Newport in County Mayo. Oh, step time. As England steadily gained control of Ireland, Grace came under increasing pressure to relent to the English crown. She also had 4 sons, by the way. An expedition from Galway attacked Grace in her castle on Clare Island, so she turned to piracy, blockading the port of Galway and attacking English ships in Galway Bay. When the English governor of Connaught, Richard Bingham, captured Grace O'Malley's 2 sons, she set sail for England to speak to Queen Elizabeth I face to face. Her ships sailed up the River Thames in London, which smelled terrible back then, where Grace met Queen Elizabeth at Greenwich, which is an awesome tale. Here's an image here. It's a really cool legend. On meeting the Queen, Grace refused to bow, stating that she herself was a queen of her land and not a subject of the Queen of England. So back then, the Queen of England would have styled herself Queen of England, Ireland, Scotland, and I think even they said France even back then. But Grace was like not recognizing her as Queen of England, basically. And it also, a legend comes that Grace's nose was running or whatever, so the Queen, they gave her a handkerchief, so she blew her nose in it, and then threw it in the fire. And they were astonished. They were like, why'd you just throw that handkerchief in the fire? And she's like, in Ireland, when we use a handkerchief, we throw it away because it's dirty. And I'm like, yeah, probably a good point. England, especially London, was full of germs, and I'm sure those handkerchiefs didn't help. Anyway, Queen Elizabeth I and Grace were approximately the same age, and they were both very unique women, and then that they were women of the time in a man's position. So they had respect for each other. Because Grace was a rare, a woman queen pirate. She did not disguise herself as a man. And then Queen Elizabeth was, of course, an extremely powerful Queen of England. Unprecedented. So anyway, they struck a truce, the two, because they respected each other. Grace would switch from attacking English ships to attacking Spanish ones, and her sons were returned to her. She died at Rockfleet Castle in 1603, the same year as Queen Elizabeth. And that was, of course, before the Golden Age. Yes, all queens are women, did I say? I mean that she wasn't... that usually they were kings. Alright, let's search Stead Bonnet real quick. Bonnet. Let's see. That was bugging me so much. I kept thinking, who is missing from this list? English pirate who was known as the gentleman pirate because he was a moderately wealthy landowner before turning to a life of crime. He was born into a wealthy English family on the island of Barbados and inherited the family estate after his father's death in 1694. It's interesting because most of them turned to piracy for the money, but he didn't need it. He bought a sailing vessel, the Revenge, and traveled with his paid crew along the eastern seaboard of what is now the United States, capturing other vessels and burning other Barbadian ships. He set sail for Nassau in the Bahamas to the haven for pirates known as the Republic of Pirates, but he was seriously wounded en route during an encounter with a Spanish warship. He met Blackbird and ceded his ship's command to Blackbird, because he was incapable of leading his crew after his injury, I assume. Before separating, Blackbeard and Bonnet plundered and captured merchant ships along the east coast. After Bonnet failed to capture the Protestant Caesar, a ship, his crew abandoned him to join Blackbeard aboard the Queen Anne's Revenge, and he stayed on board as a guest. Later commanded a crew again. Did not command a crew again until summer 1718 when he was pardoned by North Carolina Governor Charles Eden, received a clearance to undertake privateering against Spanish shipping interests. He was tempted to resume piracy but did not want to lose his pardon, so he adopted the alias Captain Thomas and changed his ship's name to Royal James. He returned to piracy by July. He was like, this sucks. Hey, Joshua. No worry. No worries, Gundam. He anchored Royal James on an estuary of the Cape Fear River to careen and repair the ship. Let's see. And then he engaged in battle against some pirate hunters, ultimately surrendered. He was brought to Charlestown and escaped, but was recaptured on Sullivan's Island, brought to trial and charged with 2 acts of piracy and sentenced to death. Bonnet wrote to Johnson, who was the governor of South Carolina, to ask for clemency, but he endured. Why would he get clemency? And he was hanged. So, look at this. Look at that mustache. Mustachio. Braven doesn't like the pirates. I like Grace. I'm sorry, Braven. She's awesome. Alright. Alright, it's time to vote for next week's topic. And British export shall be gone. Yo, yo, it's regular export, y'all. Okay, next week's topic. Oh, and I see a request from Braven. Yeah, and Aid, these your people? Oh, God. Do you mean are these your people? Hold on, my throat's too effed up. I need a break for a sec. Voice cracked. Yeah, I was like, Aid. What does Aid have to do with it? Recipes, that's so funny. Oh my god. Alright, so topics for next week. Suggestions? Yeah, and are these your people? Absolutely not. I may be making an unaliving with my deals, but I don't sell people or unalive them. So some topics you might like. We could do Talking to Women Part 2. We could do autism. Autism from an autistic person. The first car. Excuse me. History of gacha games. History of warships. Ooh, that's a long one, Chim. Thank you, Josh. Wait. I'm tired. History of pharmaceuticals. Very interesting as well. Even non-human animals have their own pharmaceuticals. All right. Good. Okay, so I see someone has seconded History of Warships. All right. Good. Second things that you like. That's very helpful. Ravenwolf, that's kind of broad. What do you mean? History of console gaming, you mean, Chim? AK-chan, it is 8:58. Braven, that's too upsetting. I can't handle it. It's too upsetting. I'll cry the whole time. Unless that's what you're looking for. Alright, we got a second for History of Gacha games. Pirates aren't worse, Braven. Way more people have died for natural disasters than pirates. Are you kidding me? It's not even a competition. Exactly, Jack Tricks. I would include gachapons, so I'd start with that. Alright, so here's what I'm thinking. EB Games versus GameStop. Does EB Games still exist? I thought they were gone a while back. This I know. Oh my gosh. Just a sec, guys. All right, so I've got so far history of warships, autism from an autistic perspective, and history of gotcha. We need one more topic. Raven, were your ancestors involved with pirates somehow? Did they get boarded by pirates? I know, Recipes. Where is that? I don't think he was here last night either. Right, guys? All right, we'll just stick with those three. History of warships, autism, and history of gotcha. And I know she'll get the best of me. The worst he was there last night? Okay, for some reason I thought he wasn't. Well, sure, Braven, that's valid. Technically, they didn't do it for fun. They did it for money. Not that that makes it better. That's cool, Recipes. What year was that? Farthest we can track my family history is like, our first ancestor that came to America in the 1600s. I think that's as far as we can go. Reliably. Because Ancestry.com will take me all the way back to like the 1200s, but I'm not sure how reliable that is. Everybody had the same name back then. No, I agree, Braven. It doesn't. That's cool. That's super interesting. I love genealogy. Super interesting to me. She told me don't worry about it. Vote, my friends. So it's sure looking like Warships is gonna win. Oh, dang, Recipes. Wow. Yeah, I was able to track like a couple lines back that far, but I was like, I don't know. I don't think it was as reliable. Because they start all having the same names. They're all Edward and William. And, let's see, Henry. Alright, so Warships won. In a landslide. Oh, are you satisfied, Ravenwolf? A landslide. So it's looking like history of warships. So we might talk some more about the Sea Peoples and the Illyrians. We'll save autism and gotcha for another week. Is that, did I not say gotcha? What did I say, Gundam? Did I say anime? Oh, I said warships. Yeah, okay, my bad. So we'll save autism and gotcha for another week. Warships will be next week. Oh. All right. Gotcha, gotcha. Exactly, Bravenwolf. Alright, everybody. Reminder, the Bunny Girl event starts after patch in a few hours. So be ready. Sorry, it looks like, did it look like I winked at you? My eye just really, my left eye itches really bad, so it might look like I'm winking. Alright, everybody. Ah, my eye. I will see you tomorrow for Story of Seasons, and hopefully I'll have unlocked further hearts with jewels. Alright. Majram. Bye.